Hey, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. It is late night still, and I thought that I would introduce another of the stories that are in one of my books, which you can get on Amazon. I write under the name of Terence Flannery, and I should explain, I don't know why I need to explain this, but people don't seem to understand that you can have two names if you do something professionally, which another name would suit better. So I write under the name Terence Flannery. Now, ironically, this is actually my real name from birth. That's what was on my birth certificate, is Terence Peter Flannery. But then when I was a musician, I felt that it was a better name in England at that time was Martin, which was more of an international name. Flannery being, of course, strictly Irish, of which I am Irish descent. So I always thought that that was quite funny, actually, when I joined the army, because I was an English-born Irishman in a Scottish regiment, and none of them were happy. So anyway, this particular story is based on something that, once again, a real life incident, and it's about my sister Patty. My sister Patty was 7 years older than me, and was like my brother, was a tough lady. Me being 7 years younger than her, I was her kid brother, and if I got in any trouble and anybody chased me as far as the front door, they had to face up to Patty, and Patty was no easy job, I can tell you, and she would soon sort them out. Well, this is the story of how Patty dealt with a particular incident when I had been probably a bad boy, and we were living in a place called Wythenshawe at the time, and Wythenshawe was a huge council estate where all of the houses were owned by the government, and my parents were offered a house in Bleasdale Road for anyone who coincidentally might be living in that area. This has happened before, where people knew where I'd lived when I gave the actual name of the road. So we lived on Bleasdale, and this was it was good in so many ways, because it was right next to farmland. In fact, the whole thing had been done in bought farmland, and it was very close to what was called Ringway Airport. Ringway Airport later became Manchester Airport, and we used to go up there and watch the planes, and that was one of those things that kids did, along with train spotting and stuff like that we did. But anyway, back to Patty. Patty was a talented girl. She was part of a teenage dance group, and I went to see her once at a show that she was in. With my mum took me, and we went to see Patty dancing in a troupe, and it was quite a kick. So here she is, and this is called The Case of the Bloody Wellington Boot. Enjoy. This is the case of the Bloody Wellington Boot. It's the final version, I hope. Okay, so welcome to The Foreigner in the Philippines. I'll say that again. Welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Good evening. Well, I thought I would give you either, depending on your viewpoint, either a test or or permission to press next. because I thought that I would narrate to you a story. Well, this is one of the stories that I wrote in a book called The $4 Coffin, The Dying Man and the $4 Coffin. So, I should explain to you that I came from a family of 5. My older sister Patty was older by 7 years, and my younger brother Nev was younger by 7 years. So I was the one in the middle. Now, this story is actually a true story. But as with all stories, any storyteller, writer, will take what is actually a kernel of truth in a story, and he will make a story there. Like in all movies that are based on true stories, because conversations that happen between maybe two real characters have to be made up and created. So a story has to be created. Well, I created this story, and it is based on the truth, because this actually happened. And it is called The Case of the Bloody Wellington Boot. I hid behind Patty, my big sister, as she faced up to our neighbour, who was as mad as hell. I had done some mischief that really upset him, though I honestly can't recall what it was. I remember running down the Ginnel, the enclosed passage between our house and the house next door, in the long terrace of houses in Wythenshawe. He wanted to get hold of me, but Patty stood in his way. She was very slightly built, and at 14 years of age looked much younger. Now, to my 7-year-old eyes, the neighbour was a giant of a man, and he looked 10 feet tall, and oh, how he wanted to get his hands on me. "Where's his mother?" he demanded. "She's not here," Patty told him, folding her arms and jutting out her chin. "And when she's not here, I'm his mother." Considering how our parents brought us up, it would be logical to think we would have all been very timid. Maybe we had to toughen up just to survive. Well, at any rate, me, my brother Nev and sister Patty each developed what me mam called too much lip. Our mouths would always come into play, and whenever we were challenged, and we had learned to speak up for ourselves early in life. Patty was the eldest sibling. Patty went on tour with a teenage dance group, and even though she was as skinny as a chicken wing, she was tough. She had stepped in and saved me on more than one occasion and seemed quite fearless, as did my younger brother Nev. I learned to talk my way out of trouble, because I was not as physically courageous as they were. Patty's response had not satisfied the giant, and he was primed for action and was making threats of what he would do if he got hold of me. Without taking her eyes off the giant, Patty spoke over her shoulder. "Go inside the house," she told me, and as I turned to flee, I heard a lot of scuffling going on. I didn't stop to see what happened next, but when I reached the kitchen door and dared to turn and look, I saw the giant leaving in a hurry, clutching his head, and that seemed to be the end of it. 2 days later, my mother answered a knock on the door to discover a uniformed policeman standing on the step with a piece of paper in his hand. "Patricia Flannery?" he asked my mother, expecting she would say yes. My mother called for Patty, and the surprised cop repeated his question. My sister had received a summons to appear in court. The giant had filed a complaint with the police and was charging Patty with assault and battery. Now, I don't remember attending the hearing, but from what my mother and sister told me, Putting it all together was an easy task for the imagination of a 7-year-old boy. At the court, standing with his hand on the handle of the door leading from his chambers to the courtroom, he paused, as was his habit, and murmured to himself the words of King Lemuel's mother to her son. Proverbs 31:8-9. Speak up for the people who cannot speak for themselves. Protect the rights of all who are helpless. Speak for them and be a righteous judge. He straightened his robe, and in a barely discernible cloud of talcum powder, he gave one last tug at his wig. The irony did not escape him. He coloured his own greying hair, but wore a white powdered wig when he performed his duty. Opening the door, he stepped into his day as the clerk brought the room to order. The judge scanned the courtroom with a jaded eye, looking for the fool and the troublemaker. One or the other inevitably showed up in his court with a frivolous case to waste his time. These were stereotypes he had come to know well in his years on the bench in the austere oak-panelled courtroom. He was resigned to this and consoled himself by remembering that justice had been administered in this room for over 100 years, in cases ranging from the bizarre to mind-numbing tedium. The gavel was smooth and polished, and at home in his hand, and he couldn't help thinking of the times when he had wanted to hurl it at some attorney or other, an admission he had only ever made to his lifelong friend and mentor from his home in County Clare. Father Donovan had recognized something special in the boy with the photographic memory and a quicksilver mind, who had quietly memorized the entire Bible word for word. A friendship forged in the fire of often heated debate on every verse of the Bible developed, that left the young man grieving when the old priest passed away. He was left with the legacy of what he sometimes thought was a curse: a love of the Bible, chapter and verse, and a fondness for Irish whiskey he could only wish to better control. Patty was unashamed. "Me dad's Wellington boot, sir. I clobbered him with one of my dad's Wellington boots," she replied, to hoots of uncontrolled laughter in the public gallery. For once the photographic memory of the judge failed him as he gazed in disbelief at the sheepish-looking giant. Faster than usual, he thought, here was the fool. And he struggled to recall the exact verse in Proverbs that came to mind. Even if you beat fools half to death, you still cannot beat the foolishness out of them. Of course, the case was dismissed, but I feel sure that somewhere in the halls of the famous Scotland Yard is a room where they keep exhibits of cases of special historical interest. In pride of place is a well-lit glass display case with me dad's Wellington boot displayed under the legend, "The Case of the Bloody Wellington Boot." This has been A Foreigner in the Philippines. Thank you for joining us. Bye for now.